When you think of the Canary Islands, what comes to mind? Probably sunny beaches and vacation spots, right? Well, today, they've become the front line of a huge shift, one of the newest and most dangerous migration routes into Europe. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how this route works, based on the analysis of former Ambassador Xavier Drencourt.
So the big question is, why here? Of all places, how did this chain of islands, a tourist hotspot off the coast of Africa, become such a critical entry point? As we're about to see, the answer is this powerful mix of geography, very sophisticated organized crime, and the weird complexities of European law.
You know, for years, when we talked about migration into Europe, the focus was always on the overland Balkan route or the sea crossings in the Eastern Mediterranean. But that map is being redrawn. Now the focus has shifted to what's being called the Western route, that incredibly dangerous journey across the Atlantic to the Canaries.
To really get a grip on this, we've got to look at how the journey is organized. And let me tell you, this isn't just a few individuals hoping for the best in a small boat. This is a big, structured business.
And Drencourt's analysis puts it in a really stark way. He says this isn't random at all. He describes it as a total package, a service sold by smuggling networks that basically operates like a travel agency for illegal migration. It's a start-to-finish deal, though an incredibly dangerous one, designed to get you from point A, your home, all the way into Europe.
So what does this package actually include? Well, it breaks down into three pretty clear and pretty brutal stages. First, there's this punishing overland journey, often right across the desert. Then comes the really perilous part, the sea crossing from the coast of Mauritania or Senegal. And then finally, arrival, the moment that changes everything legally.
Okay, so you might be wondering, with all this happening, how do these boats just keep leaving? Well, the source points to one big factor, corruption. And the numbers here, they tell the whole story. When a single bribe to just look away is worth more than a local police officer's entire monthly salary, you can see how the system becomes almost impossible to police.
All right, so let's say someone survives that incredibly dangerous crossing. Their journey isn't over. In fact, in a way, it's just beginning. Because the moment they arrive, a whole different set of rules kicks in. This is where European law takes over.
And to get what happens next, we need a quick refresher on something called the Schengen area. Put simply, think of it as a giant zone of 29 European countries, where all the internal borders have been removed. Once you're inside one, you can travel to any of the others, often without a single check.
And this is the absolute key. The second a person sets foot on a beach in the Canary Islands, they are legally on Spanish soil. And because Spain is in the Schengen area, bam, they are legally inside that entire border-free zone. The islands literally act as a gateway to almost all of continental Europe.
But here's the thing, for most people on this route, Spain isn't the final stop, not by a long shot. They often have a very specific destination in mind.
And more often than not, that destination is France. So why France? Well, a few big reasons stand out. First, language. Most people on this route are from French-speaking West Africa. There are also strong family and community ties already there. And then, according to Drencourt, there's the perception that France has the most generous social benefits, and critically, a legal system where expulsion orders are very rarely actually enforced.
The source material really paints a picture of two very different approaches. Let's compare Italy and France for a second. In Italy, there are all these administrative hurdles. You need official papers just to buy a SIM card or get electricity. It makes life really difficult for irregular migrants. But in France, those barriers just don't exist in the same way, which makes it a much more accessible place to live.
And that difference in accessibility, it has a huge financial impact. Just look at this number, 40%. What is that? Well, according to the source, France, just one country, accounts for 40% of all emergency housing costs for migrants in the entire European Union. Think about that.
So how did we get here? Why does this system work this way? Well, to really understand the present, you have to dig into the past. And the analysis argues that the whole legal system we're using, it was built for a completely different world.
Let's just look at the timeline. You've got the 1951 Geneva Convention, right? It was written to protect European refugees after World War II. Then there's Schengen, originally designed for Europeans to travel easily. And you have these very specific treaties, like the 1968 one with Algeria, that create special rules. None of this was ever designed to handle 21st century global migration. Let's zoom in on that 1968 deal with Algeria, because it's a perfect example.
It basically creates a special, much easier path for Algerians to get residency that exists completely outside of normal French immigration law. And because international treaties trump national law in France, it creates all these loopholes, like getting merchant status without any real checks. It's like a parallel, more lenient system.
Okay, so we've got smugglers, outdated laws, complex international agreements. It's a mess. So what's the way out of this? What does the analysis actually propose as a path forward?
Well, the first and maybe most important takeaway is this. There is no magic wand, no silver bullet. The idea that you can just pass one more immigration law, what would be the 30th one in France, and fix all this, it's just not going to work. The problem is too deep.
Instead, the argument is for what Dream Court calls a 360-degree approach. So what does that actually mean? It means using every single tool you have, all at the same time, using diplomatic pressure, renegotiating those old agreements, making administrative life harder like they do in Italy, and changing national and European laws. All of it, together.
And one of the biggest proposals is to fundamentally change Schengen. The idea is to return it to what it was originally meant for, free movement for Europeans and only Europeans. This would mean that a non-EU national who gets a visa for Spain would only be legal in Spain, not automatically free to travel across the rest of Europe.
And all of this really boils down to one final massive question. We're trying to solve a 21st century problem of global migration with a 20th century rulebook written for a post-war Europe. Can that ever really work? That is the core challenge that this whole situation leaves us grappling with.